talking. Marcelo, do you have any questions? And I see we have a lot of comments. I don't know if you've seen any that we haven't covered in this amazing conversation.
There are a lot of nice comments. We come back just after. I have this question that is, it's kind of bugging my mind now. We have seen these fiasco elections in England, and then again a fiasco election in France. We've seen this pump of narrative of more war from people like Callas and Ursula von der Leyen, and all these globalist people, and they are at the same time absolute panic. We have the complete debacle of the Biden and Trump comedy, stand-up comedy show, whatever you can call that. And I can hear all these people talking about bringing the people together. And we usually know what this means. And at the same time, we are about 15 to 20 days away from major event in France, which is the Olympic Games. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, Emanuelito called the Putin asking for, a ceasefire, temporary ceasefire, not to break the party of the Olympic Games because it's the major event of the year. Of course, we cannot keep war during that, right? Mm-hmm. And France is also well known from other major events like, Charlie Hebdo, the Bataclan, the truck on Nice, which, by the way, I was in Paris during the Bataclan attack. And, well, not there, but,
You were close. You were a couple blocks away.
A couple of blocks away. And I didn't see anything else than the sirens, but I remember the day very well. Mm-hmm. How do you see this?
Well, so listen, France has a lot of problems, really, really a lot. As I said before, unemployment is high, purchasing power is low. But I say the worst is that the French don't know who they are as a people anymore. There's a very huge identity problem. The relationship to God, or whether you believe or not, but this is spirituality. France has always been built around its relation to Catholicism, to Christianity, the values that brings, and they are losing that. So something quite curious which is happening in France. There are less people going to church, but those who are going back to church, this is something for the first time in a couple of years, there are much more baptisms in France. A lot of people who are going to traditional mass. So that means that what happened in France at one moment after the end of the 60s, where people were saying, listen, we have to do some sort of aggiornamento and bring modern mass, so we're going to get rid of the Latin, we're going to get rid of the incense and all that, and now that people are going to come. The result is that they put so much water in the wine that the wine had no more taste, and people fled. And now people are coming back. So these aren't small numbers, but it's interesting because it's not just anybody in the population. I've read figures about really people from all across people from the countryside, from the cities. A lot of people are looking for something, and a lot of these people are coming back to the traditional mass in France, in any case. But they're globally lost. The media, the level of the schools, the level of the media. So before purchasing power and just think about oneself and one's greed and stomach and all that, it's who are we today is the question which is coming to lips. What are we as a nation? Who are we as a people? And you just mentioned radical Islam. At least recent figures show that 23% of the names given to children in France are Muslim. This is huge, and some regions in Seine, it's over 60%. So, are the French in a situation today where they themselves are lost? Integration of immigrants has been a catastrophe in France. France did not lead a decent immigration policy. That means that they brought a lot of people over for cheap labor, but they didn't prepare anything so that these immigrants would learn the French language, appreciate French culture, learn French history. And if you don't do that, then
that's Europe-wise, by the way.
That's Europe-wise.
Except in Switzerland, I saw Switzerland doing a very good job. Decent, I will not say it's perfect, but much, much, much better than what you see here in Italy, for example, or in France.
Or in
Portugal.
That's good to hear that sometimes some countries understand. I mean, how conduct a proper immigration program. So in France did not do that. And at the same time, so what a lot of these immigrants do, well, they reorganize their own societies in France. So they build parallel societies. And now we've arrived at a stage where parallel societies, if it's concerning one street in your city or a little part of your town, I mean, you don't care, okay, so this is Chinatown, this is Algeria town. But when it starts representing 50% of the town, and when some of these people start saying, listen, we're the majority, we want to impose our own way of seeing society. That means we don't want to touch a woman's hand. We want separate bathing lanes in the swimming pool. We don't want to eat pork. We don't want to eat this and this, that. This is becoming a problem. So this is getting out of hand. And France doesn't know how to tackle this. And they're just putting mainstream politicians, they're just putting the problem under the rug, saying there's not a problem. But we've had riots last year. We've had more and more riots. There's some parts of the French cities where the French police don't go, and so French are fighting each other between the left and the right. The immigrants are taking a look at who are these crazy guys? Why did we come to this country? And they're saying, well, we're strong enough today, and there's enough of us to build our own counter societies, because I mean, if you guys don't want us, and we didn't do anything to integrate them, and we didn't do enough, that's for sure. They at the same time did not do enough to integrate. I mean, it's not a black and white scenario as well. Both that makes we didn't do a good job, and a lot of them, because I don't want to put everybody in the same basket, but a lot of them didn't do the effort necessary. I mean, I've lived in a lot of countries. In every country, I try to learn the language, adapt, and if there are no-nos in some country, I just won't do it. So a lot of these immigrants didn't do that. So on both sides, and now they're building their own counter societies, saying, listen, we don't want to. So all this is fueling hatred. All this is we've got all the ingredients to have more than a Molotov cocktail. This is a implosion of society, and we could talk about anomia, where that means there's no more anything binding the people in a country. I mean, we don't have anything more, we have less and less in common, and everybody's individualistic, trying to defend himself. So if that's the situation, then why should I be paying taxes for somebody who's fighting against my society, who doesn't agree with me? So this is fueling such a sentiment. And again, Marcelo, you're right. This is across the Western world, and at the same time, we're having very bad economic results. So all this are I would say, this is a highway to either a civil war or a destruction of what France used to be. It's not easy to find. I'm working on a new book on France, and at the end, I want to try to find a solution. And I said, wow, this is mind-boggling. I don't know how you can find a solution, how the West can find a solution to this situation. Should you give away bits of land, so you cut out the country, saying, okay, the leftists, you go there, the conservatives, you go there, and the Muslims, you go somewhere else? I don't know. This on paper, of course, is a bad idea, but how do we get out of this without fighting each other? Because force and domination is just in the DNA of mankind. So this is the history of man, and it's saying that, okay, we will no longer have wars, we will no longer fight, is false. And I've seen this myself in Yugoslavia. I've seen it in Donetsk a couple of years before the war broke out in Donbass. Ukraine was organizing the Euro of football, which is going on in Germany now. So nobody would have thought that there would be a civil war. And I never thought as a kid that in the 1990s there'd be I used to go to Croatia on vacation. I never thought that my cousins would be fighting Croatians that used to be my friends in Croatia. So this can happen very quickly. So how can we find a solution to get away from that? And now is definitely when there's nobody in the political spectrum who's got some sort of program or plan to gather the people around some sort of common idea. Because at the end, France is not just a question of values; it's a question of identity. Who are we, and are we ready to live together? And because you can have French from the left, French from the right, but if they all agree that they're French and they want to live together and build something together, okay, then they're French, and we just fight this out as we've always done between us. But at least we stay French. Now we've got people who are just so apart politically that you don't see how they can live together. And I think this is something which is extremely dangerous for Western countries globally.
Yeah, I think it's exactly it. When you have this social atomization due to late stage capitalism, due to the rise of postmodernity for various reasons, the collapse of religion, there's no longer a very strong identity in these countries. And it's across Europe. Again, I'm not in Europe, but this is how I perceive it. And so when there's no more strong identity to integrate these immigrants into, then it's really not surprising that they would be creating these parallel societies, because why should they integrate into this complete relativism?
Yeah.
It might be more challenging to integrate some people into a country with a strong identity, but at least it's possible, where people are encouraged to learn a language, perhaps incorporate into other socio-cultural norms. But if there's really nothing that the society can offer them other than perhaps economic perks that you're saying are now dwindling, that it's kind of hard to blame the immigrants, for better or for worse, that they're not integrating into this thing, because this thing is very nebulous and it doesn't really exist. And yes, you can say in part this is an issue with French colonialism of the past, in part it's this idea that people are interchangeable, this cheap labor. So there are all these different currents that are kind of coalescing together. But I think the focal point here is this complete collapse of social integration as strong identity, again, partly religious, partly cultural, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of this deep internal spiritual crisis, I think, that's fueling a lot of this. So I don't think there's an easy solution either, but it's definitely not surprising that politicians wouldn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. It's, they just kind of want to serve their term, get their money, get their perks of having a particular social status, and basically be like, maybe Louis XIV. It doesn't matter if there's a, was it he that he said if there's a flood after me, it doesn't matter. And translating into
après moi le déluge.
Exactly. So it's kind of that kind of mentality where there is this perception of a coming collapse, or at least some further social disintegration, but no one really wants to tackle it because it's too difficult a subject. And you'd have to answer very difficult question about yourselves before you even address issues with immigration and integration within the EU and kind of more practical things. So it's a little bit depressing.